So in the previous video, I talked about a situation where I was looking at something and that person picked up me visually interacting with that. And they picked it up without seeing it. They felt it as the thumb at my brother's back. So I believe that ESP, various perceptions of ESP is a real skill. Like the touching incident I was talking about, the most basic skill I can think of, the most basic ESP skill I can think of, is knowing when somebody is looking at us. I could do this all of my life. I could tell when somebody was looking at me, and quite often when I'm looking at somebody, they'd know I was looking at them. The difference between me and somebody, just a common everyday person, is I noticed that. I was aware of it, and so I would take mental note of when incidences like that came up. And I don't do this as much now that I'm over 50, but I still can. For the most rest of us, consider this less than interesting, and basically can't be proven. So to them, it cannot be real. If you can't prove it, it can't be real. I beg to differ. So hear my story. Granted, you cannot prove anything to someone who doesn't want to believe it. There are times that I have tried to prove my point about knowing when somebody's looking at you. Later in my life, I did begin to understand that it isn't always the best thing for people to know about some of these subjects, including this one. But let's skip over that point for a moment. So in the mid to late 1980s, I was working for Boeing, and working there, I had a coworker. His name was Tom. I won't say his last name. He was a very typical white shirt and tie engineer in that way of being. Everything can be explained with science and technology, but to him, if it could never be explained with science methods, or up to now anyway, it doesn't exist. So I challenged him that the skill of knowing you are seen, being seen, is real, and is indeed ESP. This particular little skill set was actually part of Magnum PI as part of his coming back from war. They typically, for soldiers, this is a known thing, that they develop the ability to know that they're being looked at. Of course, Tom, he did not agree with this, so the discussions we had went from there, spanning many days, maybe even weeks. At some point, we had projects, and he never agreed with me. We had projects that took us away from each other, and I didn't see him again for 2 years. The end result before the break was that we both did not change our positions, and both felt that the other was simply stubborn, and stubborn not to see how we ourselves had proven our point. At the end of the 2 years, I was set up to meet up with Tom near a huge machine tool we were working on at Boeing. This was in the middle of a room you could measure in quarter miles, and it was tall. There was a stand, that was almost half a story off the ground. It's probably 1,000 feet or maybe 500 feet from the door that I used to access the building. That door was not normal access. It was a high security area, but that door was open to us for the work that we were doing. Apparently it was off security access rules for a few days. So when I got to the door, it was around 10 a.m. on a sunny day. I looked in the doorway, and Tom was right at the expected spot, 500 feet from me, his back to the door. I noticed he had a tie on. His shirt, slacks were exactly as I would have expected, and I focused on the look of his body. He was back to me. He was looking at the machine that we work on, and he was kind of really heavily focused with his hands on his hips. And head low, and had an intense stance, which showed he was frustrated with something at the machine. To save hearing all the details, you have to take my word that there was no possibility that he could have seen me. In that moment, I recognized him. I was like the $6 million man. I recognized everything about him. I go, I'm recognizing Tom. And in that moment, he stiffens up, straight up, stiff as a board, and as if suddenly distracted from his concentration, dropping his arms, and turns suddenly and looked right at me. He did not scan across anywhere else. I thought I was finally going to win my argument. I walked around obstructions, over to the stairs, and walked up to the second platform, and just before I could say anything, he burst into complaints about the machine we were working on, and I forgot about the argument until after he had walked away for the day. Damn. So the next day, we were scheduled to meet again at the same spot, same time, bright day, again, same door. He was up on the stand in the same spot, and a complete rerun of everything. I sparred him, I focused, I recognized him. He stiffens up like before, and turns around and looks at me. So by this time, I stopped him before, when I got caught back up to him, I stopped him before the complaining would start, and I said, "Did you notice that? You could feel that I looked at you, and then you turned around and looked right at me. You knew it." He just looked totally unimpressed, as I expected, but his answer was not. He said, "Oh, that." It was kind of like that. It was just, "Yeah, okay, so, yeah." And I said, "Whoa, what do you mean?" And he explained that in the 2 years since we last worked together, he had joined into competitive paintball. At the level he had reached, a person requires to know when somebody targets them, and they must look and shoot before getting hit. Anyone who cannot learn to feel it, someone looking to target you, they will lose miserably. It is a thing. You have to know they are looking at you before they finish moving the gun in your direction. He was now a believer, at least in that skill. No big deal. But argument is not what won him over. It's very instructive to me about human nature and how to discover and relearn a natural ESP skill. Practice it. Know it. Believe it. Use it. It was for him. It was a carrot and stick motivation. If you fail, pain in the butt. If you feel it and get success, hey, great day. Dead simple set of conditions to learn that one skill. Go figure.